Good afternoon. This is the 7th Senator Edgardo J. Angara Public Lecture on Public Policy, a part of the Venerable Bede Distinguished Public Lecture Series. Our theme for this public lecture is Transformative Education for Sustainable Development. As an institution, we play an essential role in promoting transformative education to help create a culture that engenders growth, collaboration, and empowerment among students, faculty, and communities that will contribute to resolving 21st century challenges. But how do we navigate our way there? How do we make education the biggest driving force of development? A driving force of a sustainable future. It's going to be an exciting afternoon because we will be learning from 4 distinguished speakers whose expertise is in the field of education. So without much ado, we will begin the program with an invocation followed by the singing of the Philippine National Anthem to be led by Vilches, composed of students from the College of Law. We are requesting everyone to stand.
Things in the past, things yet unseen, wishes and dreams that are yet to come true. All of my heart, all of my praise, my heart and my hands are lifted to you.
What can we give that you have not given? And what do we have that is not already yours? All we possess are these lives we're living, and that's what we give to you, Lord. Lord, I offer my life to you. Everything I've been through, use it for your glory. Lord, I offer my days to you. Lifting my
Please be seated. For the information of everyone, this program is streamed live via the official YouTube channel and Facebook page of Bede University, brought to us by Bede Media. So to all our viewers online, warmest greetings from all of us here. We will now proceed with the opening remarks and the overview of the public lecture by our dearest University Rector President of Bede. Let us all welcome the very Reverend Father Aloysius Maria Imaranan of the Order of St. Benedict.
Thank you so much, Professor Saibil, for the introduction. Good afternoon, my dear friends. To our four esteemed speakers and guests, my dear Bede faculty members, administrators, students, to the family of Secretary Angara of the Department of Education, I am truly delighted to welcome you all to our 7th Senator Edgardo J. Angara Memorial Public Lecture. This public lecture is among the Venerable Bede Distinguished Public Lecture Series being held in honor of Saint Bede, an English Benedictine monk born in 672 AD in Harrow, England. He is a theologian, chronologist, historian of the English people, formidable scholar, and illustrious doctor of the Church. This marks a historic event in the journey of Bede as a Benedictine educational institution towards becoming a global research university. This, our lecture series, aims to educate, share knowledge, foster a vibrant spirit of learning, and encourage everyone, encourage discourse among the wider public and the Bede community on relevant and timely issues about various fields of studies. In particular, the Senator Edgardo J. Angara Public Lecture Series on Public Policy aims to honor and propagate the admirable vision, achievements, contributions, and legacy of the late Senator Angara, a great Filipino leader, exceptional lawyer, dedicated educator, accomplished lawmaker, and patriotic statesman. It also aims to promote the continuance of his aspirations for national development, justice, and stability. In this year's Senator Edgardo J. Angara Seja Memorial Public Lecture on Public Policy, we have this very valuable opportunity to listen to our prominent speakers who are here with us, and then engage in evocative conversations on our theme for this year's public lecture entitled Transformative Education for Sustainable Development. Tackling this topic is one of our university's affirmative actions in promoting and achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 4, on quality education. According to UNESCO, education is a human right for everyone throughout life. It serves various purposes, including providing knowledge and skills, promoting critical thinking, fostering personal development, facilitating social cohesion, and promoting cultural preservation and diversity. The purpose of education is multifaceted and essential for individuals and societies to flourish and transform themselves. In 2019, UNESCO adopted a global framework, Education for Sustainable Development, ESD, towards achieving the SDGs. Education for Sustainable Development is subsequently defined as a holistic and transformational education that addresses learning content and outcomes, pedagogy, and the learning environment, enabling a shift from teaching to learning, and thus requiring an action-oriented, transformative pedagogy which supports self-directed learning, participation and collaboration, problem orientation, interdisciplinarity, and transdisciplinarity, and the linking of formal and informal learning. My dear faculty and students, it is important to note that transformative education builds on published works about the theory of transformative learning according to Jacques Mezirow, an American sociology and educator. Transformative education is a process by which individuals acquire knowledge and skills that go beyond ensuring the individual learner is successful in their future careers. It can provide learners with value orientation, skills, and motivation to contribute to the well-being of the local and the global community. Moreover, transformative education enables learners to contribute to our collective survival during uncertain times by equipping them with the knowledge and skills to address the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Hence, in this context, transformative education aims to prepare learners to take life-changing actions to address the unsustainability of our current social economic model that influences educational policy and practice through metamorphic stages of learning in both theory and practice. I would like to emphasize here that our beloved His Holiness Pope Francis emphasizes the transformative power of education as a cornerstone for fostering peace and understanding in the world. The Pope advocates for inclusive education that transcends socioeconomic barriers, empowering individuals to become agents of change in their communities. Pope Francis seeks to inspire a generation of people like you, equipped with the knowledge and values necessary to address pressing global challenges and promote a culture of dialogue and solidarity by prioritizing education. I also would like to add that Pope Francis reminded Catholic institutions like ours to ensure that education is accessible to all. I repeat, Pope Francis reminds all Catholic institutions to ensure that education is accessible to all. Everyone has the right to education. No one should be excluded. Education is above all an act of hope that looks from the present towards the future. Hence, the distinctive feature of a Catholic education in all areas is true humanization that arises from faith and generates culture. Education is not possible without betting on freedom, opening the way to social friendship and the culture of encounter. This I quoted from his latest work on Fratelli Tutti. More significantly, Pope Francis stressed that the creation of relationships of justice among people, the capacity for solidarity towards the needy, and the care of the common home will pass through the hearts, the minds, and the hands of those who are being educated today. This reminder captures the spirit of transformative education for sustainable development as an essential part of the Church educational mission. Hence, this blessed afternoon, we have invited renowned experts in our country. Dr. Karol Mark Yee, our Executive Director of EDCOM 2. Let us give him a warm applause. Dr. Maria Luz Vilches, Vice President for Higher Education from Ateneo de Manila University. Dr. Rochelle Irene Lucas, Dean of the Brother Andrew Gonzalez College of Education, De La Salle University. And last but not the least, Dr. Rhodora Angela Ferrer, Executive Director of the Philippine Education Assistance Committee, PEA. A warm applause to all of them. My dear friends, they are our experts and practitioners in the field of education and will give us a deeper appreciation of transformative education towards sustainable development and how we can authentically strive to move towards this direction in a collaborative endeavor. Finally, let me take this opportunity to express my profound appreciation and gratitude to all of you who are here, and most especially for the commendation of the Secretary of the Department of Education, former Senator Sani Angara, for his personal attendance. In advance, I would like also to thank our organizing committee of this public lecture series for their hard work in coordinating this momentous event today. Once again, good afternoon, my dear friends, at maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. God bless everyone.
Thank you very much, Reverend Father Aloysius Maria Maranan, OSB Rector President of San Bede University, for that warm welcome, very informative and inspiring message. May our own metamorphosis, change of mindset and worldview begin today. At this juncture, we shall now hear an inspirational message from a dedicated public servant and leader, lawmaker, and family man. He was recognized as one of the 10 outstanding young men for government service and legislation in 2010 and one of the outstanding Manilans for public service in 2017. He served as representative of Aurora Sloan District from 2004 to 2013, as a senator from 2013 to 2024, and now is the Secretary of Education. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome Education Secretary Juan Edgardo Soniem Angara for his inspirational message.
Hello, I'd like to greet Father Aloy in the San Bede community. Of course, Dr. Karol Doris Ferrer, Dr. Vilches, Dean Lucas. A good day to all of you. We'd like to thank San Bede for continuing the Angara lectures, and I think my father would have been particularly thrilled with today's topic, which is education reform, and I think he would be very proud of the work done under the ENCOM 2, which we helped initiate when we were still in the Senate. And of course, now we are doing our best to implement many of the reform recommendations of the ENCOM 2. So we wish you a very good day. And I think I join my mother. I think my mother's with you to thank you, but I also would like to express my thanks to the San Bede community for remembering my father and his legacy, much of which had to deal with education. So we look forward to the findings and the reforms that will be recommended or coming out of today's lectures. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary of Education Juan Edgardo Soniem Angara, for that message. At this point, we proceed with the introduction of our lead discussant this afternoon. Our lead discussant is the Executive Director of the Second Congressional Commission on Education, which is tasked to assess the education system in the Philippines and provide policy recommendations for reform. He completed his PhD at the University of Cambridge as a scholar of the Jardine Foundation and the Cambridge Trust. He is concurrently faculty at the Ateneo de Manila University, Research Fellow at the University of the Philippines Center for Integrative and Development Studies, and Research Affiliate at the Program for Research on Private Higher Education at the State University of New York in Albany. He previously served as Executive Director 4 of the Commission on Higher Education and Director of its K-12 Transition Program. He also served as Legislative Officer in the Philippine Senate under then Senator Edgardo J. Angara, who chaired the Committee on Education in the 19th Congress. He was also chief of the Party of Youth Works PH, a 5-year youth empowerment and workforce development project implemented by the Philippine Business for Education in partnership with the U.S. Agency for International Development. He completed his Master of Education in International Education Policy at the Harvard University Graduate School of Education as a Fulbright Scholar, and his Bachelor of Arts in Broadcast Communication, magna cum laude, at the University of the Philippines, Diliman. He is a recipient of UP's most prestigious award, the Gawad Chancellor. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome our lead discussant, Dr. Karol Mark R. Yee.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. Magandang tanghali po sa lahat. Of course, Father Aloy Maranan, our old friend but looking younger by the year. Thank you for the invitation and thank you for the support always. Dr. Vilches, Dr. Lucas, Dr. Ferrer, our sparring partners in education reform. We see each other very often. In fact, I think this week I've seen them twice already. Magkakatulong po kami kasi napakaraming trabaho sa edukasyon na kailangan nating ipanalo. And we're very glad that we have very committed partners pushing for education reform. And of course, to all the students here in San Beda and all those joining us online, magandang hapon po. The title of my talk is the very daunting Transformative Education for Sustainable Development. Next slide, please. But I'd like to start by paying tribute to my former boss, Senator Edgardo J. Angara. When I was in high school, our aspiration was to find where our deepest gladness met a world's great need. And in my first job, actually my second job out of college, I was here, and this was the deliberation on the K-12 law. Yung baka nag-senior high school ngayon, nung ginagawa, mga nag-senior high school dati, we were still legislating the law back then, and I was working under the wings of Senator Angara. And it was during this time that I felt that this was a passion I really wanted to stay in, and without his mentorship through all of those years, I would not be doing what I'm doing today, and not also doing the work in education that I still find to be one of the most meaningful things I have found in my life. Next slide. The topic was Sustainable Development Goals, and 10 years ago in 2015, we put out an aspiration to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, which was really a whole menu of different objectives for our country. First and foremost was to ensure that all girls and boys complete free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education. But that is just the first bullet. Second was equal access for men and women, substantially increase the number of youth and adults participating in education, build and upgrade education facilities, among many other very noble aspirations that were quite bold but very difficult to actually achieve. 10 years after, where are we today and what have we actually won in? Next slide. Just to point out that this is not a new goal. Although we are 10 years since the Sustainable Development Goals were articulated, actually we've been pursuing this goal for 100 years already. In 1925, the first ever commission survey of the Philippine education system was done by Paul Monroe, who flew from the United States. Actually, hindi ko po alam kung nag-aeroplano siya or nagbangka or nagbarko. Kasi nung panahon na yun, baka hindi ko alam kung may aeroplano na. But they came here to study Philippine education. And for 100 years since, we have been pursuing this continued aspiration of ensuring that each Filipino child has access to quality education. Next slide. This is a paper that I actually published. It is titled At All Costs, Educational Expansion and Persistent Inequality in the Philippines. The question that I asked was, opportunistic expansions, meaning to say, did we keep expanding our education system as long as opportunities presented themselves, or did we persist or force the expansion against all odds? Equality of opportunity in the Philippines since the 1940s, and whether or not expansions in access contributed to improving equity. You know, since the 1940s, nag-expand ang ating education system. Ang tanong, mas naging pantay at naging equitable ba ang access sa education? Noong 1940 po, we made education compulsory until grade 4. Nung panahon na yon, hanggang grade 4 lang ang binabayaran ng Estado na libreng edukasyon. Meaning, kung gusto mo pong mag-grade 5, grade 6, grade 7, you all had to pay out of pocket. Our basic education system then was only elementary and only until grade 4. It was only in Metro Manila that people had access up to grade 6, grade 7, and high school. In 1953, we made education compulsory until grade 6. But what did Isidro say about that expansion? Sabi po niya, we made education compulsory until grade 6 despite the fact that the need for school facilities always exceeded the financial resources of government. At that time, 38% of the national budget went into education, and yet we were struggling to finance, to provide the resources needed for quality education for all. Despite that, we persisted. In 1988, we made secondary education free for all students, covered by the state. In 2013, we expanded it further with kinder and then senior high school. And lastly, in 2017, we made higher education free by legislating the universal access to quality tertiary education. A few questions to ask: was it really and is it really universal? And second, is it really of quality? Next slide. Smith and Chung in 1986 remarked that educational attainment in the country was an ever-expanding pie that was always sliced in the same proportions. Padagdag ng padagdag ang nakakapag-aral, pero ang pagkakaiba ng mahihirap at mayayaman hindi naman nagbabago. Parehas pa rin. Next slide. In my research, in my PhD, I looked at many resources, historical records on Philippine education. And what I found was that the problems we are facing today and the ones we have faced for the past 100 years were ever ancient and ever new. It were the same problems that we have faced 1925, 100 years ago, and the same problems we continue to face today. In 1925, in the Monroe Survey, what it said was that the first characteristic which impresses outside observers is the excessive number of reports required of all teachers and administrators. They said that they have not seen another country, another education system, which required its teachers to submit this many reports. Alam niyo po, ang mga guro natin hanggang sa ngayon, pero actually nagbabawas na si Secretary Angara ng napakaraming reports, pero unti-unti po ito, kasi talagang napakaraming naipon over the past 100 years, ang mga teachers natin, more than 20 reports, actually 40 yata ang reports na sinasubmit. Nagsishade sila ng bawat estudyante, full day, half day ang pinasok, every day, every student. Next slide. In the EDCOM 1, the findings of the first Congressional Commission in the 1990s, led by Senator Edgardo Angara, what they found was that education did not work. And in fact, they put forward a bold reform, which was to trifocalize the Department of Education, Culture, and Sports. And baka hindi na po inabot ng mga estudyante dito ang DEX, but your teachers, your faculty, I think, yun pa yung nalaman, ang ating DEX before when we were students. But what happened since then? Next slide. This is Senator Angara when he led the first EDCOM in the 1990s. After the first EDCOM, they passed many laws, creating CHED, creating the Teacher Education Council, establishing centers of excellence in teacher education, creating TESDA, creating the licensure examination for teachers, which most students now take, creating the PRC, Modernization Act, and also the Governance of Basic Education Act, or DepEd. 30 years in between reforms, in the first EDCOM and now the second EDCOM, where are we today? The mandate of the Second Congressional Commission on Education, which I now serve, is to conduct a comprehensive national assessment and evaluation of the problems of Philippine education. Why did we need a second EDCOM 100 years after aspiring for accessible and quality education? Where are we today? But siguro po ang mas mahalagang tanong, why are we here today? This is what we found in 2018 when our country participated the PISA or an international assessment for grade 10 students to measure their skills in reading, math, and science. We found that we were at the bottom of all participating countries. Worst, we found that 75% of our students had minimum basic proficiencies in these three subjects. Lower than Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Vietnam, and second to the last because Cambodia joined for the first time in 2022. Ang ginojoke ko po lagi, thank you Cambodia. Sana po sumali kayo lagi. Next slide. Since then, we've released 2 reports. In 2024, we released Miseducation, the failed system of Philippine education, and just in January, we released Fixing the Foundations, a matter of national survival. We realized that our children are actually falling behind very early on because of weak foundations. That what we are seeing in terms of our performance in PISA, in TIMSS, in CPLM, and the data that we are seeing, that 4 out of 10 college students are dropping out before they even finish, was because of what they received from 0 to 8 years old. Once they are born, all the way until they are grade 3. I'm not sure if you remember how your experience was as a student before kinder, and also what you learned when you were grade 3. But apparently, all of our studies in the past 2 years have shown us that these were the most critical years of education that actually determine how you are doing today. In a UNICEF study that is about to come out, we found that most of our grade 3 students were 2 to 3 years behind. What does that mean? Pwedeng grade 3 or grade 4 kayo, pero sa totoo lang, ang alam ng mga bata, grade 1 or kinder level. Papasa ng grade 4, pupunta ng grade 5, pero ang alam, grade 1 level. Because of these early handicaps, we are limited in terms of what our learners could learn and could achieve in later years, despite progressing to higher levels, to junior high, to senior high, and some up to college. In literacy, 48% of our current grade 3 students are not grade level ready. Half of all Filipino students today in grade 3 could not read, are struggling with remembering simple words, and cannot explain character motivations or predict story events. In numeracy, about 80% of our grade 3 students struggle with multiplication, division, and geometry. Here in NCR, in the start of this school year, only 3% of grade 3 students could divide. In an exam that they took, called the Rapid Math Assessment, they were asked a simple question. 168 divided by 8. What is the answer? Ulitin ko. 168 divided by 8. No cell phones, please. What is the answer? Okay. If you did not know the answer, please approach Father Aloy later. But currently here in NCR, only 3% of our students knew the answer to that question. When we visited intervention camps over the summer, in the DepEd organized learning camps, we found grade 8 and 9 students who did not know the answer to 5 times 5. 5 times 5? 10 times 10. Magagaling po yung mga estudyante natin, Father Aloy. I'm glad that you could answer those questions. What is clear is that we could not create a perfect education system on paper or maybe even by law if we did not meet our learners where they currently are. After all, any education system to be successful needs to meet their students. Ang tanong po dito, who and where are our learners today? Secretary Angara knew this, and so as he came into DepEd, he laid out a 5-point reform agenda, of which part 2 was that learners' physical and mental well-being were protected and also nourished and supported. Kasi napakahalaga po na hindi lamang magaling tayo sa mga leksyon, pero alam natin, nasaan ba yung mga bata? Ano ba ang kailangan nila? In a study that we did with LaSalle, we found out that the country was the bullying capital of the world. That most Filipino students, young and old, reported being bullied multiple times per week. That our students were the loneliest of all participating countries in international assessments, and that they felt that they did not belong in school. We also learned that the Filipino youth today, that among the Filipino youth today, those coming from the poorest households are less likely to complete senior high school or to go to college. We also learned that the percentage of working students in college tripled from 2013 to 2021. 4 in 10 are not in education because of household responsibilities. Kailangang mag-alaga sa magulang, sa kanilang lolo't lola, sa kapatid, kailangang magtrabaho para tumulong sa gastusin sa bahay. Most of our youth are in elementary occupations and service and sales work that are low skill, that you don't even need a high school diploma for. But what are their aspirations? They aspire to become professionals by 30 years old and to have a monthly salary of 20 to 30,000 per month. At bakit po nila gustong kumita ng ganitong pera? Ang sagot ng karamihan, 76%, not because they wanted to buy things for themselves, not because they wanted to go shopping or to travel, but because they wanted to help their parents and siblings financially. Where are our students today? Why are they persisting? What are their dreams? In another study that we commissioned with the support of the Philippine Business for Education, we found that most Filipino students were probably in school, but there were so many marginalized students among the IPs, among persons and learners with disabilities, and among those who should have gotten support through SPED, Madrasa, and ALS, or the Alternative Learning System. We also found in another research that we commissioned that there is an aspiration gap among our youth. What does that mean? That 75% of all Filipino youth expected or desired to finish college, but actually only 23% finish. Napakarami nga pong nakakatuloy ng college, pero napakarami din ang nagda-drop out. Almost 1 in 2 drop out of college. Why are we here is the question. We learned in our study that 1 in 4 Filipino children are stunted. Alam niyo ba kung ano ibig sabihin ng stunting? Father Aloy. Yung stunting ay yung pagkabansot. Or yung height mo ay hindi akma sa tanda mo. Oh, bullying guys. Bawal yan. We learned that this was not because of poverty alone. And we found in our study that we commissioned with PIDS that whether rich or poor, very few of our children receive the energy intake that is required between 6 to 60 months of age. Why is that the case? Lack of awareness, lack of information, and lack of access to healthy food. Anong pinakamabilis na bilhin sa mga tindahan? Instant noodles. Anong kinakain ninyong lahat? Instant noodles. Carbohydrates. Ang sinasabi ko nga po sa mga nagpapa-feeding program, whether parishes or schools, kung mag-feeding program po tayo at ang ipapakain natin ay lugaw or instant noodles, baka po we are not always helping. The study shows us that the severe deficits of Filipino children in the first 1,000 days is good protein and good fat. And we should endeavor that we are not just making sure that their tummies are filled, but that they are actually getting the nutrients that they need to be able to develop their minds. The problem with stunting is that the damage to cognitive development is irreversible. Ang ibig sabihin, kahit magbusog tayo hanggang grade 6, hanggang high school, if you did not get it in the first 1,000 days of life, there is nothing more that could be done after. My question to the university, to parishes, and to student groups, are you doing feeding programs? What are you feeding? When are you feeding? Who are you feeding? What are good sources of protein? Eggs, tofu, munggo, kadyos, taho, mga ganyan. Hindi po instant noodles. Next slide. Early childhood access also remains limited. Today, 12 years after the Early Years Act, which was also authored by Senator Edgardo Angara, only 21% of Filipino children have access to early childhood education before kinder. Data shows us that if you have access to ECCD at age 3 to 4, mas mataas yung likelihood to complete high school, to go to college, to be literate, to not drop out, and to have higher earnings in life. We also found that the Special Education Fund reinforces inequity. Where you live determines what quality of education you receive. In first-class municipalities, their SEF is 13.7 million per year. Those coming from poor LGUs, 5th and 6th class, have only 199,000 per year for all of their students, for all of their needs. We also found that despite laws such as RA 10931, the tertiary education subsidy no longer helps the poor. We found that from 2018 to 2023, the proportion of the poorest who received the tertiary education subsidy went down from 74% to 31%. Napunta po siya sa mga estudyanteng hindi naman necessarily mahihirap pero nag-aaral sa mga private universities in municipalities without SUCs and LUCs. Meanwhile, data from Secretary Rex of DSWD shows us that about 500,000 of the poorest high school graduates were actually eligible for college in 2021. Out of 501,000, ang binigyan po natin ng support, 495. How do we go from here? How do we resolve all of these challenges that persist and limit access to quality education and equity in our education system? We realize also that beyond these constraints, we see many forces of change that Ateneo, through the support of RIFE and GB Sealed, showed us that there are many things that we will need to hurdle to succeed as an education system. Mental health, climate disruptions, suspensions in classes because of typhoons and heat index, also many institutional challenges that persist in our country. Naalala niyo po yung study ko on inequalities in access to Philippine education? The question I asked was, as we kept expanding our education system in the past 100 years, is it now more equal or equitable? And is there now access to quality? What did I find? I found that inequalities in higher education remained because they emerged not in higher education, but in secondary. The poorest can still not complete high school. Before we talk about access to higher ed, we need to talk about graduation from high school. While free higher education improved access for advantaged and disadvantaged students, it also did so equally, meaning to say, an ever-expanding pie still, but cut in the same proportion. It did not reduce the gap between the poor and the rich. We also found that during times of economic difficulty, disadvantaged students or the poor tend to drop out of school, while those who are capable or middle class tend to just move from very selective and expensive schools to more affordable institutions. For us in EDCOM, our advocacy is to go back and fix the foundations. We could resolve all of the problems of higher education. We could perfect senior high school. We could improve all of our facilities. We could do so many things on education reform. But if we don't fix the foundations, nutrition in the first 1,000 days, improved access to early childhood education, and if we don't make sure that every grade 3 student is literate and numerate and masters foundational skills, we will only keep firefighting and we will only keep trying to catch up. Kailangan na po nating masawa sa paghahabol. Kailangan nating mag-build, mag-invest sa strong na foundation para sa bawat batang Pilipino dahil sa paraan lamang na ito natin masisiguro na magtatagumpay sila at matututo. But we should also not look only at the symptoms of the problems, but at the roots. We need to learn to prioritize as a country on those that are most critical and impactful. Despite all of these other goals that we have ratified and accepted as a country, such as the Sustainable Development Goals, saying that there should be education for all, that we should keep expanding access, we need to not lose sight of our own need as a country to focus our resources because it is limited. We cannot aspire to keep expanding everything just because without focusing on quality education at its most basic, from 0 to 8. We need to strengthen monitoring and then accountability so that we know that when your mayor does not put resources to education, it is them that they are accountable because they have access to a special education fund. If you know that you come from a 5th class and 6th class municipality and you have limited resources, then you should demand from your national government for compensatory action to make sure that where you live does not determine what opportunities you have as a student. We also need to make sure that universities are not sitting idly by, but doing research to hold government accountable to its targets and goals. It should speak the truth, it should call for accountability, and it should say when learning is happening and when it is not. We need to create a pipeline for human resources in education and make sure that our universities are offering the courses that our country requires. In Region 8 and in Region 4B or Mimaropa, wala pong nag-o-offer ng Masters in Guidance and Counseling. Pero may batas na bago ka makapag-licensure para maging guidance counselor, kailangan mo ng Masters. Ang vacancies po sa DepEd, 4,400 na hindi mapunan kahit na napakataas ng problema sa bullying because of the dysfunction of a system where you require something that is actually not available and you have universities that are not attuned to the needs of their community. We need to build capacity of stakeholders who could help ensure check and balance in the system and also to ensure that reforms continue despite changes in administration. We also need to make sure that there is transparency and interoperability of data. How is one school doing? How is the other university doing? In our research in EdCom, we found that there were 200 higher education institutions who continued to operate and accept students in teacher education kahit na 10 years na silang zero passing rate. In a system that works, we need to hold people and institutions accountable. We need to have transparency in data, and we need to be vigilant to make sure that an education system works. But it will only work if we all do our part. Whether you are students then or no longer students, but maybe college students, graduates, workers, parents, or government officials, this reform requires long-term commitment. Because the kinder students in 2024 will not finish grade 3 until 2028. They will not take PISA until 2033, and they will not finish college until 2041. If we don't do good on this aspiration, if we don't personalize this ambition for our country, because it is not just government that has the responsibility to make sure that an education system works, then we will find ourselves in this situation again where most grade 3 students could neither read nor multiply and subtract. This reform is a shared responsibility of each Filipino. And we could only blame ourselves if we find ourselves failing again in the next 30 years. Senator Angara, when he lived, always lived by this battle cry that every Filipino deserves a fighting chance. He passed laws to fix our education system, to create agencies, to make sure that they have the resources that they need to actually help our students thrive and succeed. But institutions and laws will always be imperfect because they will need to evolve and they need to be implemented. But I also would like to add that maybe we don't only need them to have a fighting chance. As Secretary Angara said and challenged us to do, we should also make sure that they find joy in learning, that they are curious and eager learners, and that learning enables them to flourish, not just to survive. As Saint Benedict said, it is time for us now to rise from sleep. And we should take this responsibility of not falling asleep, of always staying woke to the responsibilities that we face, because this is a responsibility that we should hold dear and should commit to actually seeing through within our years. Maraming salamat po.
Once again, a round of applause for Dr. Karol Mark R. Yee, Executive Director, 2nd Congressional Commission on Education of the Philippines. Dr. Yee presented a picture of the current performance of Filipino pupils and students and the saddening root cause of this. Transitions and development will be a tough nut to crack if we fail to address the basic concerns. In the words of Dr. Yee, we should fix the foundation. First, we should meet our students where they are. And it is time to wake up and stay awake. For our audience who are eager to ask their question to our lead discussant, please reserve your question. We will allow you to directly ask your question or to give us your question in a piece of paper. We shall entertain that during the open forum. At this point, we shall now introduce our second discussant. Our second speaker is an associate professor of English at the Ateneo de Manila University, where she is currently the vice president for higher education. She also previously held the positions of dean of School of Humanities and chair of the Department of English at the same university. In addition, she is engaged in the quality assurance work of the Philippine Accrediting Association of Schools, Colleges, and Universities as a member of its Board of Trustees as an accreditor. Let us give our warmest applause to our second discussant, Dr. Maria Luz C. Vilches.
I felt like graduation with that music. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me here, and I'd like to greet also Father Maranan and the three other members of the panel. We're all friends, and I was very glad to realize that we all know each other and work together here. So, okay. So the topic of discussion today puts the issues that face us today in Philippine education that Dr. Markey already described, the hard facts, I think. I think it's important for us to face the hard facts so that knowledge of that will help us move forward in collaboration with one another to address whatever we can, the needs that are there present before us. Every serious education outfit will always want education to be transformative for a longer stretch beyond our time. That's quite a tall order in a world that grabs that rock of Sisyphus down before even the force of gravity does it for the rock. You know the myth of Sisyphus? There's this man who's pushing that boulder up the summit, and that boulder keeps coming down. That image is quite absurd. But no institution is perfect, but each institution has to be aware of what challenges it, no matter how absurd, and confront the issues. Or maybe these issues or these challenges will one day take over the institution without remorse. Here are some that I've got here, but these are nothing new, maybe just to put this in perspective. Even if we are in the classroom right here now, the socioeconomic factors in our society affect us. Mark was talking about nutrition. Are we fed? Are our students well nourished? That's very important. The law of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need to fill the stomach first before we can encourage them to think with lofty ideas. The socio-political factors. Do we have leaders? Who are our leaders today? Not just locally, but internationally, that can be emulated by the youth. Do we have them as champions? These are questions that we need to answer. The pandemic and other emergencies or climate change, have we got mechanisms to address these? AI and technology, everybody's talking about AI. How can AI be harnessed? Not to take over our own intelligence, but for us to harness AI. Mental health, Markey also talked about mental health. What are the mechanisms that we need to address mental health? Even the world of work is changing. The trends now in the workplace that need to be factored into the classroom programs. For example, lots of students don't want 8-to-5 jobs anymore, or some students after graduating from college, they take 1 year off. In my generation, immediately go into work, but not anymore. So what does that mean? And they want to create their jobs and be their bosses instead of them being part of the entire system. There's a growing trend toward finding jobs without getting a degree, That's quite threatening. What is the concept of education now to the young? Is it just for utilitarian purposes? What about micro-credentialing and all the rest of it? What about the accrediting bodies that help us in our own education? A whole lot of these things that are external, and yet they are important for us. There are also internal challenges. We know them. Our faculty, our students, who are we educating? What are the programs we offer? What are the services? What is about the governance? Is the leadership of the institution proactive and robust? Are there enough competent educational leaders? What are financial resources, and so on and so forth? So the list makes us look like an examination, self-examination before a PASCO or an AUNQA assessment, but realities that institutions have to confront even if there's no assessment or accreditation visit. Within the realm of transformative education for sustainable development and against the backdrop of challenges I enumerated earlier, I want to focus on quality and relevance in higher education with the following building blocks. I want to present 2 quotes and an anecdote. I want to present a modest proposal and talk about education as character formation, talk about linkages between the school classroom and the world classroom, and a summary of points and implications for governance. The first quote is from John Ruskin, an English writer, philosopher, art historian, art critic, and polymath of the Victorian era. He says, "Quality is never an accident. It is always the result of intelligent effort." Ruskin reminds us that to produce what can be hailed as quality is not a result of shrugging one's shoulders and saying, "Bahala na si Batman." It is about action with a purpose. If we have to translate this into our context of education, it means action with the institution's vision and mission in mind. It means not losing sight of the North Star that guides all our efforts. Coming closer to home, we can look at quality that is no accident as referring to the alignment of the institution's mission and vision to the objectives and outcomes of the learning environment. Quality is demonstrated by the following elements: fitness for purpose, excellence in learning outcomes, and culture of quality. That fitness of purpose is crucial. It is what gives the institution its unique identity. But the higher education institution's purpose is broad enough to encompass significant issues in society. I think it's important for us to bear in mind that what we do should be faithful to what we say we are. That is about internal quality assurance. And this is a frame of mind that gives us a better focus on the big picture with which the small frames can be properly located. The ASEAN University Network Quality Assurance defines quality assurance as a multidimensional concept in which the multifaceted aspects of teaching, learning, research, and scholarship commonly service and their governance are enhanced through the processes of internal evaluation and external review. Quality assurance consists of the procedures for management and assessment for the monitoring and evaluation of higher education performance. So my modest proposal is for institutions to have an internal quality assurance framework so that quality assurance will not be a mere accident, but a product of intelligent efforts. There is an efficient framework that is often used now in many quality assurance undertakings. It is called the Plan, Do, Check, and Act model that is associated with Edward Deming, who is considered by many to be the father of modern quality control. It looks like a common sense way of looking at things, but unless we put our finger on it, that common sense method can be easily taken for granted. First, we set out where we want to go. And this doesn't just refer to curricula. It can also refer to what students do when they're studying, you know. We first set what we want to go, where we want to go, and after planning, we implement what we have planned, then we monitor what we're doing, And are we okay? Are we on the right track? Or if we have deviated, not necessarily as negative. We measure our distance to the goal, and it's also a check against how realistic our plans have been and how we respond to the emergent matters that come our way. After monitoring, we act, we make adjustments, and hopefully improve. If we use this framework for our processes in the university, we have a handle in the development of our programs and track what we're doing. This framework helps us to do a regular self-examination of things so that we will not lose our focus on our North Star. I promised 2 quotes, so here's my second one from our friend, the Greek philosopher that needs no introduction, our friend, the great Aristotle. He says, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit." Aristotle underscores the importance of repetition. We cannot characterize a person by identifying him or her with a one-time action. That would mean overgeneralization. There has to be a pattern of behavior to consider before we can say that this person is the way this person is. We cannot say that a student is excellent simply from a grade of A in one of the exams. He must consistently get an A or within the range for us to consider that this student has caliber worth noting. In other words, excellent performance has become second nature to this student. It has become a good habit. And a habit, as we have learned in grade school, is something one does without even thinking about it. If we translate this to the bigger education context, we aim to achieve excellence as a habit at all levels. At one time, a one-time incident of being in the top 10 in an examination, garnering an international award for a contest, for example, or getting assessment or accreditation for some programs, all of these are good, but they need to be sustained so that energies are spread out and with a regularity. In other words, to be excellent, an institution has to look at a combination of different aspects in sync with one another toward the vision and mission of the school. Students, faculty, research, outreach, governance, to name a few. It is a daily commitment to excellence, and in that sense, it has become a good habit. So using the plan, do, check, act model in our processes can make excellence a good habit. After the 2 quotes, I'll give you an anecdote. Once I invited an Ateneo alumnus to our Ateneo open house. He was a philosophy major who found a lucrative job in the business world. Then he was a CEO of a huge communications industry in the Philippines. I was curious to hear about how philosophy fitted into the world of business and the industry. Well, he said, it was precisely because of his philosophy background that he got it. And more than that, it was his overall humanities background that sealed it for him. His liberal education taught him how to be analytical, critical, creative, reflective, and all that was needed in thinking out of the box to find novel solutions to problems. He said that the company and many other companies today really want to have employees who are more than just a sum of their technical skills on a specialized subject matter or field of discipline. When it was his turn to look at CVs of applicants to the company, the last thing he would consider was their business background. He capitalized on the interview session where he could check if the applicant could think from ground zero. To gauge critical thinking and the use of the creative imagination, he made sure he was hiring someone who was not dishing out solutions out of textbooks or performing like a robot, but one who could tear things apart and put the parts back from a new perspective. One who could indeed think from ground zero, or as it were, one who would know how to think and act out of the box. Often we recognize the experience of students who are now professionals in the workplace. They find that the technical skills they have learned in school are no longer as relevant in the workplace as they had been taught in their classes. Think of cell phones that get cast aside after 6 months of being considered brand new. New employees have to be trained in the use of gadgets, implement new processes and new ways of doing business. They need thorough onboarding, unlearning what they had learned in books and learning something that new that responds to the needs of the clients in the workplace and in the greater society. This little story of a philosophy major turned CEO in a business company makes us think twice about what is indeed relevant and thus sustainable, and how do we prepare our students to become relevant once they get out of the revered walls of our classrooms and embark on a lifelong journey in the workplace. Zooming out of these anecdotes, we go to the literature. There's a succinct description of quality and relevance in higher education that I would like to quote here. That education is expected to help learners identify, enhance, and utilize their rational, creative, social, and moral powers in a manner that fulfills them individually as well as facilitating national development. Quality and relevance concerned education would therefore emphasize independent, analytical, and creative thinking that leads to transformation of the learner to become an autonomous and responsible actor in human affairs. Quality and relevance in education is the point where human skills and interests, technology, management, and the social and business environment all converge. University is the place where the whole range of available knowledge and its applicability for quality living come together to generate sustainable ideas, suitable applications to make life worth living for the upliftment of the living standards of society. This description puts the student at the center of things as the main driver of all that an institution is busy with. And the education of that student is not just for utilitarian purposes, but first and foremost for the development of the total person of that student to make life worth living. And the bottom line is for the upliftment of the living standards of society. So this concept of transformative education makes us see a student as a whole person. And our first duty in higher education is to help this person build his or her own character, critical, imaginative, reflective, socially mindful, culturally adept, self-aware of his or her strengths and weaknesses, and able to apply all these competencies in context. This is a huge part of quality development. These capacities can help students confidently face the challenges of the world of work and thus become productive. Productivity is one of the outcomes of quality education that will measure relevance and sustainability. And productivity here means not just the creation of goods or the amassing of wealth, but the positive impact of work or service on the greater society. And when an institution is serious about these outcomes, quality affects every aspect of that institution. Education as the formation of character. The student at the center of all learning is a crucial aspect of developing quality in higher education. So I would like to zero in on renewing engagement for learning. We know that learning happens both in and outside the classroom or outside a designated academic curriculum. We know too that the main driver of the educational process is the curriculum. According to Claude Pavor, SJ, the curriculum carries the mission. When a university has new strategic priorities, the curriculum has to be reviewed to incorporate learning outcomes that will spell out how both students and teachers can carry out the student academic formation that includes the articulation of strategic priorities as learning outcomes in the course syllabi, choosing material for the study, and directing projects and papers that will demonstrate students' and teachers' understanding, appreciation, and application of strategic priorities. Other than the university's strategic priorities for a sustainable future, we have the Sustainable Development Goals also to be factored into the review of the curriculum, as they have a huge impact on our role as people for the common good of all. While the content of the curriculum and other activities is important, the approaches to teaching and learning and other related processes also determine the kind of formation that students get. how can their education be transformative? We know how our institutions are still very much organized into highly specialized areas of knowledge and traditional disciplines. And students are used to learning individually and competing with others for the best project in class. And yet we know that in the real world, when faced with a problem to solve, the engineer who is an expert in the building of bridges cannot exercise the expertise without collaborating with contractors and negotiating with the project foreman and the cohort of workers and cooperating with other personalities that run the local government or whose funding the project depends. Designing a sustainable future demands from higher education the move toward a paradigm shift from thinking that learning is an individual endeavor to thinking that learning is a cooperative venture using interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary perspectives in the design of courses and in the approach to learning. Stefania Giannini, Assistant Director General of Education in UNESCO, has this to say about approaches to education. The expert group advocates for more inter- and transdisciplinary approaches in education and research because only a holistic approach can design adapted solutions. It stresses the need for universities to become more open institutions able to integrate diverse cultures and knowledge systems and take a more democratic approach to knowledge and sharing. It urges for a much stronger presence in society through awareness raising, outreach, and partnerships. The objective is for sustainability to become a core practice and purpose of higher education institutions, reflected in structures, programs, and activities, putting students in contact with real-world problems and immersive experiences. While we are all in the business of educating the youth, each institution has a unique context, so all our processes have to be anchored in our individual contexts. What might be suitable in one context might not be in another. That's why one cannot transport a curriculum as it is, no matter how excellent it is, to another without tweaking it to suit the context of the new environment. That's why prototype lesson plans, for me, are not full proof of the transfer of technology in lesson planning and implementing the lesson from it. Every classroom is different, even if the subject matter is the same. Quality character formation is not a one-shot deal. I am sure we are familiar with the saying, it takes a village to form a child. It certainly takes a lot of effort and process to kindle learning on an ongoing basis for students in our care in higher education. How do we deepen their ability to harness learning on a long-term basis? You know, the technical skills that they learn in their fields of specialization, for example, computer engineering, the lab techniques they use in organic chemistry, the multimedia gadgets that they manipulate in a communication studio, the design tools they maneuver in their art classes, all these may need updating when they are already in the world of work after graduation. When we form students in higher education, we should recognize that they will eventually be part of the greater society. They should not just be intellectually adept, but also have the ability to deal with people from all walks of life. The saddest thing, I think, is for us to produce experts who are admired for the work that they do, but who are deplored for lack of people skills that will help them deploy their expertise. Intellectual ability alone is not enough. That can be covered by artificial intelligence, and in a much better way, maybe, in fact. The creative imagination is important as well as resilience. The ability to bounce back when things don't work their way. These are qualities that cannot be done by AI. The lifelong skills that our students learn through their curriculum and many types of learning experiences while they are in college will sustain them forever, negotiating, reasoning logically, listening actively, creating solutions to problems, and showing empathy and more. Another path toward relevance in higher education is building networks outside of our comfort zones. In a globalized world, the boundaries are getting narrower every day. Higher education institutions cannot continue to sit comfortably in a corner away from others. Higher education owes it to itself, challenge itself to reach out to places beyond where it is comfortable. First, we begin at home by connecting to business and the industry, as well as local governments and other educational institutions locally. Our programs can take better shape when we get feedback from these groups for outside of our neighborhood. It is like bringing the reality outside into our world if we want to maintain relevant and useful programs. Then we go beyond our country's horizons to explore partnerships with institutions abroad. The internationalization vision and programs of higher education have to be put in place. The most popular one is to cultivate relationships with like-minded institutions and get students to do a term abroad with them. This kind of program is very attractive to students. It can truly enhance their skills and make them mature, dealing with everything on their own while abroad and learning so much from their study. It's been said many times, think global but act local. Often what happens is we begin to understand and appreciate better who we are and our local contexts when we are exposed to global spaces and experiences. Networking in this way affords the challenge of getting us out of our comfort zones and learning to deal with people of other cultures. It makes us realize that we are not a universe unto ourselves and that other vistas can influence how we see things on the horizon and allow them to enrich our perspective and ways of doing things. Learning to be inclusive is part of the requirement of a sustainable future. Let me summarize the points I've been making and conclude this long presentation with some implications for governance of higher education. Number one, there are many challenges that confront educational institutions today, but instead of allowing these to weigh us down, we need to be more strategic about fostering quality and relevant education. And the implications, we have to face the challenges, we have to prioritize what to address, and we have to create cohorts that will collaborate in that kind of addressing. Point two, we begin with the understanding that quality has to do with fitness for purpose, excellence in learning outcomes, and building a culture of quality. Purpose is the anchor of the institution. Outcomes will measure relevance of what the institution has done. Culture of quality is what sustains the institution on the road to quality assurance. To maintain quality, each institution may be served well with using the plan, do, and act quality assurance framework and make it part of a good habit. So the implications, the creation of an office, if it's possible for an institution to do that, creation of a quality assurance office that takes care of all those processes, and then finding dedicated people who can manage this tedious process, and then a robust support from the institution. Third, the ideal quality graduate that is relevant in greater society is one with a sustainability mindset, systems thinking, relationship building, continuity of commitment, effective communication and collaboration, leadership and advocacy, innovation and creativity, critical thinking and problem solving, cultural competence and inclusivity, resilience and adaptability, data analysis and action orientation. That's quite a lot to develop, but we remember that these competencies don't exist in silos. So the implication there is maybe we need to revamp the way teaching is carried out to promote learning, maybe do more interactive problem-solving activities instead of lectures, integrating the academic and non-academic activities of the students, that they are not far apart from each other, and supportive leadership that is ready to invest in teaching and learning. And lastly, quality and relevance in higher education rests on many practical considerations. A, the inclusion of school or university strategic priorities in the curriculum and the fostering of interdisciplinary approaches to program and instruction. B, creative ways of engaging learning. And C, continuing learning through network building outside the classroom or school. So a periodic review of the curriculum and instruction, maybe every 3 years, and then a retooling of the faculty in terms of the problem-solving mode of teaching. In other words, the teacher has to be the first learner. It's not like I've been there, done that, you know. The teacher will always have to be the first learner. And then proactive academic leadership that takes these initiatives on board. We in higher education have indeed a lot of responsibilities in our hands. Thinking of these responsibilities can be quite paralyzing. But let's take courage from the wisdom of a Persian poet and philosopher, Rumi. He says, as you start to walk on the way appears. But we have to start walking first before that way appears. It takes a lot of reimagining to do that on the path that's before us. So let's go where reimagined quality and relevance meet on the way that appears. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maria Luz C. Vilches, for the very engaging and thought-provoking talk. Dr. Vilches emphasized the internal and external challenges in the education sector and presented the guide on how to ensure transformative education for sustainable development. That is, to put premium on the quality and relevance of education offered and a system to ensure that these two are maintained. So now we will be listening to our next discussant. Our third discussant holds the position of full professor while serving as the dean of the Brother Andrew Gonzalez FSC College of Education at the De La Salle University, Manila. With an extensive academic background, she has made noteworthy contributions to the field, particularly in psycholinguistics, bilingualism, multilingualism, second language acquisition, motivation, language anxiety, and alternative assessment. Her research has been featured in esteemed Scopus and ISI indexed journals. She further enriched her professional experience as a fellow at the International Dean's Course facilitated by the German Academic Exchange Service from 2010 to 2011. Notably, she also served as a field contributor for Ethnologue, an international language documentation website. Recently, she was appointed as a CHED technical panel member for foreign languages. In recognition of her outstanding contributions, Dr. Lucas received the 2021 Achievement Award for Division 1 from the National Research Council of the Philippines. Additionally, she holds the prestigious LSP's Brother Andrew Gonzalez FSC Distinguished Professorial Chair in Linguistics and Language Education in 2022. Currently, she is Fulbright Advanced Research and University Lecturing Program Fellow for academic year 2024-2025 at Teachers College, Columbia University, New York. Help me welcome Professor Dr. Rochelle Irene G. Lucas.
So good afternoon, Father Aloy, Dr. Debbie, who invited me to be one of the panel discussants here, my co-panel discussants, Dr. Yi, Dr. Vilches, Dr. Doris, and also the Bede faculty members, administrators, and students. So my topic is, of course, has something to do with transformative education for sustainable development in the Philippines, and then I have a subtitle, A Path to Sustainable Future. So I will skip my discussion on what transformative learning is and sustainable development because this has been discussed by Father Aloy earlier. So I will just, I have my outline for my presentation this afternoon. I know it's long, but I will try to make it very short and snappy, so to speak. So I will be discussing the need for transformative education in the Philippines, and then I will try to connect sustainable development goals and education. And then maybe I'll just breeze through key principles of transformative education, and then transformative education practices in the Philippines, and then I'll discuss challenges in implementing transformative education and, of course, opportunities for transformation. So I'll go to my discussion on the need for transformative education in the Philippines. So the Philippines faces an array of challenges in achieving sustainable development. These include high poverty rates, environmental degradation, and inequality in rural and marginalized communities. In the educational sector, a major concern is the disparity in educational opportunities across different regions, with rural areas often lacking access to quality schools, trained teachers, and appropriate resources. So this was taken from Valencia 2018 in the EDCOM2 report. Transformative education, which fosters the development of critical thinking, creativity, and active citizenship, can provide a pathway towards addressing these disparities and building a more inclusive and sustainable society. The first has something to do with addressing educational inequities. Access to education in the Philippines is unequal. The lack of infrastructure and adequate school facilities and limited internet access contribute to the educational gap between urban and rural students. By embracing transformative education, these issues can be addressed in innovative ways. For instance, community-based learning programs that integrate local knowledge and sustainability challenges can help make education more relevant and accessible to all students, particularly those in disadvantaged areas. So that was taken from PESIMACO 2013. Transformative education encourages inclusivity by ensuring that marginalized communities are not left behind, fostering equal opportunities for learning and participation in sustainable development activities. Next, building critical thinking and problem-solving skills. Traditional educational systems often rely on rote memorization and passive learning. Kayo po pa rin po ba yung batch nung nag-aaral kayo ng language, ng grammar, yung minimemorize niyo pa ba yung mga rules sa verbs, sa nouns? Ganun pa rin po ba yun? That was how we were taught, yung may drills sa verbs, yung run, mga ganyan, di ba? So I hope hindi na ganyan ngayon, no? So which may not fully equip students with the tools they need to navigate the challenges of modern world. In the context of the Philippines, where the need for solutions to climate change, poverty, and inequality is pressing, the development of critical thinking and problem-solving skills is essential. Transformative education encourages students to actively engage in the learning process, promoting a deeper understanding of global challenges and cultivating the skills necessary to create practical solutions. Students who are taught to think critically and act creatively are more likely to be able to tackle complex problems. That is from Mezirow in 1997. Third, aligning education with sustainability needs. The Philippines, as I've mentioned, is particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, experiencing more frequent and severe natural disasters such as typhoons, flooding, earthquakes, and now high heat index. With this growing vulnerability, it is imperative that education be aligned with sustainability needs. By integrating climate change education to school curricula, students can better understand the causes and consequences of environmental degradation and climate change. Through transformative education, students can also gain skills needed to promote resilience and adapt to environmental challenges. This education should go beyond environmental challenges to include social and economic dimensions, addressing issues such as poverty, health, and inequality in the context of environmental sustainability. This was lifted from the UNDP 2020. Let us move to the sustainability goals in education. So the SDGs adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015, as mentioned earlier, provide the universal framework to address global challenges. For the Philippines, the SDGs provide an essential guide to the future direction of the education system. The SDGs offer a roadmap for the future of education in the Philippines. So I think you've been hearing about SDG 4, quality education, and let me extend that to other SDGs. SDG 4, quality education. The Philippines, like many other developing countries, so SDG 4, equitable and inclusive education. So the Philippines, like many developing countries, faces challenges related to access to quality education. The SDG 4 goal of providing inclusive and equitable education aligns with a transformative education approach. The inclusion of sustainable development principles in school curricula, such as environmental awareness, social justice, and human rights, is vital for fostering a more equitable and sustainable society. Through a more inclusive approach, transformative education allows students from various socioeconomic backgrounds to gain the knowledge and skills necessary to participate in building a sustainable future. So let me extend that to another SDG, that's SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. SDG 12 focuses on the need for responsible consumption and production patterns, an area where education can play a critical role. In the Philippines, where waste management is a growing concern, so I think you've heard that we are the greatest polluters in the world, more or less. Educating students about resource conservation, waste reduction, and sustainable lifestyles is essential. Through transformative education, learners can be equipped with the knowledge to make responsible consumption choices and develop solutions for improving waste management in their own communities. Allow me to further extend that to SDG 13, climate action. As a country highly susceptible to climate-related disasters, the Philippines must address climate change as a priority. SDG 13 calls for urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. By incorporating climate change education to the curriculum, transformative education can help raise awareness of the scientific, economic, and social aspects of climate change. Moreover, it can empower students to take proactive steps toward environmental protection, such as engaging in tree planting initiatives, for example, waste reduction, and advocating for climate action policies. Next, SDG 17, partnerships for the goals. SDG 17 underscores the importance of building strong partnerships among government agencies, businesses, civil society, and educational institutions. In the Philippines, fostering partnerships between schools, local governments, non-governmental organizations, and businesses can enhance the effectiveness of sustainability education programs. Collaboration among stakeholders ensures that resources and expertise are shared, helping to implement innovative solutions for sustainable development in schools and communities. So I will just run through the different key principles of TE. So we're talking about inclusivity, interdisciplinary learning, active citizenship, and ethical and value-based education. So I will no longer discuss that in detail because I might eat all the time allotted to me. But allow me to go to transformative education practices in the Philippines. So I identified 4 practices that we are already doing, more or less, but maybe we're not aware that we're doing it. Anyways, so several innovative practices have been implemented in the Philippine education system to integrate sustainability and foster transformative learning. These practices range from curriculum reforms to community-based projects, all of which align with the principles of transformative education. We have learned, or we have discussed the key principles of TE, I run through it. Now we'll let us see how these principles are being put into action in the Philippines. First, contextualized curriculum. DepEd has made significant strides in contextualizing the curriculum to reflect local sustainability issues. By embedding environmental studies on subjects like Araling Panlipunan, social studies, and science, students can better understand the unique environmental challenges facing their communities, such as deforestation, water pollution, and climate change. This contextualized curricula helps students connect global sustainability concerns to their local realities, empowering them to take action within their communities. This is taken from PESIMACO 2013. Next, community-based learning or CBL. Many schools in the Philippines engage students in community-based learning projects, which serves as an effective way to promote TE or transformative education. These projects may include activities such as, again, I've mentioned that, tree planting, waste management campaigns, and disaster preparedness initiatives. Through hands-on experiences, students develop an understanding of sustainability issues and learn how to contribute to solutions in their community. This is taken from Valencia 2018. These experiences help cultivate a sense of responsibility and active citizenship. Third, teachers as change agents. Teachers are essential to the success of transformative education. In the Philippines, teacher training programs focused on sustainability, environmental awareness have been established to equip educators with the tools to integrate these concepts into their teaching. Teachers play a pivotal role in shaping students' attitudes towards sustainability and guiding them through critical reflection and problem-solving exercises. And the last is the use of technology. The integration of technology into education offers students innovative ways to engage with sustainability issues. Digital tools can connect students and global networks, enabling them to collaborate on sustainability projects, access learning materials, and communicate with experts worldwide. Technology can bridge geographical gaps and provide students with opportunities to engage in transformative education beyond the confines of the classroom. So that is from the United Nations 2018. Here are the challenges in implementing transformative education. So despite the progress made, if there are progress, there remain significant challenges to fully implementing TE in the Philippines. These challenges include resource constraints, cultural resistance, and inadequate teacher training, all of which need to be addressed for transformative education to succeed. We have seen the promising practices of TE, but implementing these practices isn't without its challenges. So let us begin by examining the fundamental obstacles. Number one is, of course, resource constraints. Many schools in the Philippines, particularly those in the rural areas, struggle with limited resources such as outdated textbooks or no textbooks at all, insufficient teaching materials, and lack of access to technology. This constraints learning materials pose significant barriers to the effective delivery of transformative education. Investment in educational infrastructure and resources is essential to enable schools to provide students with the needs or with the tools they need to engage with sustainability issues effectively. So I have taken that from the World Bank 2021 report. Next, teacher training. Although efforts have been made to provide professional development opportunities for teachers, there remains a gap in training teachers in innovative and transformative teaching methods. More comprehensive teaching programs that emphasize sustainability education and the development of critical thinking and problem-solving skills are needed to ensure that teachers are fully equipped to implement transformative education, from Valencia 2018. This is very interesting, cultural resistance. In some areas, there is a resistance to the concept of sustainability, which may be perceived as a foreign or a Western idea. Overcoming this resistance requires the development of locally relevant curricula that resonate the values and traditions of different communities. By integrating local knowledge and practices, transformative education can better align with the needs and aspirations of Filipino learners, from Buckler and Creech 2014. And finally, policy implementation. While national policies in the Philippines support the integration of sustainable development goals into education, inconsistent implementation at the local level can hinder progress. More consistent and targeted efforts are needed to ensure that sustainability education becomes a central part of the national curriculum. This is taken from the World Bank 2021 report. Finally, opportunities for transformation. Despite the challenges, the Philippine education system presents significant opportunities for transformative education to flourish. These opportunities include government support, public-private partnerships, and youth-led initiatives, all of which can catalyze the integration of sustainability in the education system. Despite the obstacles, the Philippine education system is poised for transformation. And how are stakeholders contributing to this positive momentum? First, government support. The Philippine government has demonstrated a strong commitment to achieving the SDGs, particularly in the areas of education and sustainability. The ongoing K-12 reforms provide a favorable framework for integrating transformative education into the curriculum. By aligning educational policies with SDGs and promoting environmental education, the government can foster a more sustainable and inclusive education system. Second, public-private partnerships. PPP can play a crucial role in advancing sustainable education in the Philippines. Collaboration between schools, businesses, NGOs, and other stakeholders can provide resources, expertise, and opportunities for innovative solutions to sustainability challenges. For example, partnerships with environmental organizations can help schools develop hands-on sustainability programs that engage students in real-world projects. So both were taken from World Bank 2021 report. Finally, youth-led initiatives. The younger generation in the Philippines is increasingly aware of sustainability issues and is taking an active role in driving change. Student-led environmental clubs, sustainability advocacy groups, and school-based projects are fostering a culture of sustainability among young people. These youth-led initiatives not only empower students to become active participants in sustainability efforts, but also inspire other members of their communities to take action. So this is taken from the United Nations 2018 report. In conclusion, transformative education is essential for achieving sustainable development in the Philippines. By promoting inclusivity, critical thinking, and active citizenship, education can empower future generations to address the complex challenges of sustainability. Although the Philippine education system has made significant strides in integrating sustainability into the curriculum, challenges remain in terms of resource constraints, teacher training, and policy implementation. However, with continued government support, community engagement, and partnerships with the private sector, the Philippines has the opportunity to create a generation of responsible citizens dedicated to building a sustainable future. Transformative education is not just about imparting knowledge. It is about inspiring learners to become change agents and leaders in the global movement towards sustainability. So I'm also sharing with you the references for the discussion. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Rochelle Irene Lucas, for your crystal clear discussion of transformative education and the need for transformative education in our country. To embrace transformative education is to embrace also its core principles: inclusivity, interdisciplinary learning, active citizenship, and ethical value-based education. Dr. Lucas emphasized that transformative education is a pathway to inclusivity and sustainability. It will help students adapt to current challenges in education and other issues of the society and the world. Now let us listen at this point to our fourth discussant. Our fourth discussant graduated cum laude in BS Physics for Teachers program of the Philippine Normal University in consortium with De La Salle University. She was a recipient of the Department of Science and Technology Scholarship Grant. In 2015, PNU recognized her as one of its distinguished alumna. She pursued her master's in education, major in physics, completed her PhD in education, major in educational leadership and management in February 2025, both at DLSU. She completed all the academic requirements of the PhD in education, major in curriculum studies at the University of the Philippines in Diliman. In January 2014, she finished an executive program on public policy and private sector development at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy of the National University of Singapore. In October 2017, she finished an executive program on the essentials of policy development, also from LKY School of Public Policy. Her dedication as an education advocate is manifested in her work as the executive director of the Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines from May 2009 to September 2014. Presently, she is the executive director of the Private Education Assistance Committee, the trustee of the Fund for Assistance to Private Education, and the spearhead of the partnership with the LKY SPP of the National University of Singapore for an executive course for school leaders to transform Philippine education, and very recently, an executive course on data science for school leaders. She was also recently elected as independent director and corporate secretary of the Philippine Accrediting Association of Schools, Colleges, and Universities, or PASCU. She also sits on the board of several nonprofit educational institutions. At present, she serves as the advisory council of EDCOM2, the congressional committee created by RA 1189-9, tasked to review the country's education system. An educator and an education advocate. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Dr. Rhodora Angela Fernandez Ferrer.
Thank you, Bill, for the introduction. You've been sitting since 2 p.m., correct? Would you want to stand up? No? You're okay? You're willing to listen for another 20 minutes? Okay, good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon, Father Aloy. Thank you for this invitation. I'd like to greet the main discussant, Dr. Yee, and of course, Dr. Vilches, Dr. Lucas, the school officials of San Beda University, and everyone here this afternoon. Are you all students of San Beda? No, there are some students from other private schools. So are you all students of private schools? Yes? No? Okay, I am asking that question because my presentation is about complementarity between public and private schools. When I was invited and knew that Dr. Yee will be the main discussant, I know that he'll be talking much about the findings of EDCOM 2. But I connected with the work that we're doing. If you are not familiar with the Private Education Assistance Committee, it actually, for the last 20 years, has been helping the Department of Education in the implementation of the voucher program in senior high school and the education service contracting program in junior high school. So for this year, we have about 2 million grantees in 8,000 private schools in the Philippines, and our chair is no less than the Deputy Secretary, Secretary Angara. So we were in a meeting yesterday as a regular meeting of the Private Education Assistance Committee, and we spoke about a lot of initiatives that will support complementarity between public and private schools. I am saying this because, next slide, if we will look at the EDCOM 2 priority areas, one of the priority areas that we have there is complementarity. Next slide, please. So as what Dr. Yi mentioned, EDCOM 2 was created by Republic Act 11899 about 2 years ago. And one of the areas that was discussed as priority is public-private complementarity. I was telling Dr. Lucas after you spoke about public-private partnership, as one of your concluding slides, we talk about that public-private partnership, this time between public schools and private schools. And this priority area is something that is very crucial because I'll say this very, very factually. When we talk about sustainability, not sustainable development in the private education sector, we actually talk about our concern in the decline in enrollment in private schools, at K to 6, at 7 to 10, in senior high, and even in higher education. We have seen the closure of private schools in the Philippines, and as a matter of fact, our data shows that at K to 6, 92% are in public schools. At 7 to 10, only 14% are in private schools. In senior high school, we only at our 35%. It's a decline in higher ed as well. The universal access to quality tertiary education, which had a free tuition provision, free higher ed provision in SUCs and LUCs, has actually compromised private HEIs. So we really have sustainability issues for private ed in the Philippines. That is why this was identified by EDCOM as a priority. How can public and private schools actually complement each other and not compete? How can all of government think of private schools and not just public schools when they talk about budget, resource allocation, teacher training, etc.? The next slide are actually the slides now from EDCOM 2 on the reports that have come out. If you are students of education, if you're faculty members of different institutions, I hope you already have downloaded this report. The first report on the year 1 of EDCOM on the failed system of the Philippine education, which was titled Miseducation, the complementarity of public and private education should continue or should be studied because definitely, how do we solve the problems of Philippine education if we do not bring in the private schools? Or for that matter, in the workshop that we had on the futures of education, can you imagine a future where there'll be no private schools? Can you imagine a future where there'll be no private schools? We know that that will definitely be counterproductive for our initiatives at an education system that is not just of good quality, but definitely the role of private schools in nation building is really, really marginalized. The third slide is on fixing the foundations. That's again the EDCOM 2 Year 2 report. And here we talk about private school enrollment dropping by 20%, as there must be some clarity that is needed insofar as public-private partnership is concerned. So this is where we are coming from in all our advocacy initiatives, not just in the PAC, but in all of COCOPEA and the entire sector. Because if I will lead you to the next slide, there's one good news that we have from the Department of Education. In December 2023, and actually early part 2024, DepEd released DepEd Order 6, which is a framework of public-private basic education complementarity. Again, if you are a school administrator, private side, and you've not downloaded this document, I think it's high time you do. This has actually outlined 6 or 7 principles on complementarity. The first one is optimizing the roles of the public and private sectors in basic education, optimizing the roles. We are at K to 6, only 8% and yet you see congested public schools, you see double and triple shift public schools, you have highly urbanized areas where there is no buildable space for public schools. In other words, it is high time that we expand the subsidy program to K-6 as we fix the foundations of our education system. The second principle is mutual understanding by the public and private sectors of their complementary roles. I ask the administrators who are here, do you feel that the public schools actually think of you as partners, or do they think of you as competitors? Everyone has been mouthing complementarity. It is enshrined in the Constitution. And yet, in practice, what do we actually see? In the workshop that we had with Secretary Angara about this, he was saying that at this time, what we're looking forward to is this, that they are not the regulators and the private schools are not just stakeholders, but that we are co-authors in building an education system that will really allow us to be able to achieve our national development goals. The third principle is recognition of the inherent value of private education. I go back to that futures workshop that we had. If there were no private schools, and if you are a parent who is Catholic, and you want a Catholic school for your child, and all the schools are public and secular, then there's actually a loss of choice from the parents and the students. So there really is value to having private schools in the system. In fact, we've always talked about a mixed education system with two drivers, public and private. The fourth principle is reasonable supervision and regulation of private institutions. I think the administrators who are here will attest that sometimes the regulatory and policy environments are not very reasonable. Or in one meeting, there was a former university president, now chair of the board of their university, who said that we don't feel that we are partners of public schools. Even if it is said that we are partners. Sometimes we feel that, if there are two children, public and private, one of the children is the favored one. Parang may paborito, at saka parang hindi ang private yon. The fifth principle is participatory governance. How many times have we heard the lament that the private schools do not feel that they are consulted? Or even while they are consulted, it seems in the decision-making, they are not part of the thinking. We say this, for example, when the free higher ed law was enacted. Did it not cross our minds that this will really, result in closure of private HEIs if we give it free to higher education institutions, public side? At the same time, where is the alignment between free higher ed to senior high school, which we added to K-10, that allows students to exit, not just to college, but also for work? We've had experiences of students who, even after earning an NC, actually go back to college and not work. And that is because libre naman po eh. So again, that kind of a misalignment, across laws and policies. The sixth principle is equal regard to the impact of education policies and resource allocation decisions in both public and private sector. One of the examples that's often cited is this. The salaries of public school teachers, they're raised to levels which of course are, reasonable and making the teaching profession really respectable and dignified and all that. But what is the implication to the private schools? We have seen the migration of teachers from private to public, and we have seen how our private schools cannot compete with those salaries. So every time there's a senator who says they want to increase salaries of public school teachers, I would tease them and say, hindi po ba kayo magpapasa ng batas na isara na lang ang private schools? Kasi yun ang magiging epekto kapag patuloy ang pagtaas ng salaries ng public school teachers without the increase in the teacher salary subsidy, which is the only subsidy program that we have for teachers in private schools. And finally, partnerships and collaboration in achieving national education goals. This was mentioned by Dr. Lucas, how important partnerships are. But again, complementarity, sometimes I would say, is such a lonely word. We just say it, but we actually are competing. I say this even among private schools. Do you complement? Do you really not compete even while you are in a single consortium? So partnerships and collaboration, because we are building the same nation. So the next slide is really just a photo of the workshop that we had, and all the attendees were there, including Secretary Angara. And in that workshop, what is it that we wanted to do? The principles were identified in the DepEd order, but how do you really operationalize? In other words, what concrete programs, policies that will have to be done, or even, I suppose, audit of current programs and policies of government that will not pass the test of complementarity? In that workshop, we were saying, for example, some private schools would always say, why does DepEd restrict our increases in tuition when in fact we already got, the approval of our parents and our students? So we always remind DepEd that, you don't own the private schools. And private schools have stakeholders that are most crucial, including the parents and the learners. And when consulted, then we know that these are things that can be, that DepEd should reasonably think of as possible and not regulate unreasonably. But having said that, across private schools even, we also see that competition. So what can we do as a matter of fact? So there's a need to change the current view of the education system. Next slide. That was one of the resolutions. In other words, kaninang umaga, nasa Tagaytay ako, may kausap ako ng mga private schools. Pag-introduce sa akin, sabi, magandang umaga sa lahat ng kapribado. Sabi ko, pwede ba nating palitan yan ng kaedukasyon? Because it is neither private or public, but it's the education sector that we really want to be supported by the whole of nation, actually. I say this many times, so DepEd will try to do its best, but if it is not supported by, say, DICT to provide connectivity, by DSWD to make sure that the feeding programs actually work, by the local government officials so that they can complement with SEF whatever the schools need in the city or municipality. The next item there is what we said should also be thought of, the participation of private education in setting national education goals, educational planning, and providing quality education. I think this is done now. There's really a lot of advancement. We cannot keep on complaining because a lot of things have been moving. In fact, in EDCOM 2 is a very strong partnership between public and private education. In fact, we're very happy that one of our EDCOM 2 commissioners, Secretary Angara, became DepEd Secretary. One other commissioner became TESDA Secretary. So we're all moving in the same direction now. But we'd like to say that complementarity, even while there's much to be desired, we have a working, or should I say, a proof of concept, and these are the GASPE programs. Next slide. So we have all of these programs in basic education, but we know that a lot of improvements will still have to be made. If we will look at the GASPE data, the next slide on the GASPE data, we now have a decrease in grantees in school year 23-24. From a high of 1 million, some of you here might be ESC grantees, we're now down to 800,000. And why is that? The amount of the subsidy is not attractive enough at this time to move the students from public to private. So that is something that will have to be reviewed by government. If we will look at the senior high voucher program, it already has plateaued to about 1.3, 1.36, 1.35 million. This is a lot of students in senior high school supported by vouchers. How many of you were supported by vouchers in senior high school? But having said that, what exactly is the quality of our senior high provision? That is why at this time there is a review of the curriculum, because we have seen that much is to be desired among our senior high providers and the quality of their graduates. The ADB in 2020 came out with a study about these programs, and said that these programs are actually working reasonably well. The next slide, there's logic behind the programs because they are designed and set up to achieve accessible quality education, public-private complementarity, and efficiency. Dr. Vilches was talking about quality education earlier, many times in the discussion, quality education, quality assurance. But sometimes we fall off our seats whenever we have statements such as, now that there is access, we can focus on quality. It has to be accessible, quality education. That is what is crucial for us to move this nation forward. And of course, efficiency. And the question raised is always this. If government has limited funds, what is more efficient? Build more classrooms or expand the voucher program? Give the students to the private schools. So these are the discussions that are being done right now at the level of EDCOM 2, at the level of the PAC, and researches are being done along these lines. No? Because what is it that we have discovered? Not all our grade 6 graduates actually go to junior high, we know that. Not all of junior high proceed to senior high. And of course, not all of senior high, which is really expected to go to higher ed because the others are really meant to go for work after earning their NCs. But what is the efficiency of the system? DepEd has laid out a plan, for example, to solve their problem of 165,000 classrooms. That's the shortage right now. And this cannot be built overnight. But several strategies could be thought of. Vouchers will be one. And second is institutionalizing hybrid or blended modalities. That can be another strategy. But part of the thinking we'd always say is that think of private as part of the mixed education system. But having said all of that, again, I go back to DepEd has a framework. DepEd has identified the principles of complementarity. That cannot be said of CHED and TESTA. In fact, in the workshop in Feb, some were commenting, kailan gagawa ng ganito version ang higher ed? Kailan gagawa ng ganitong version ng complementarity ang TESTA? The next slide is on a House bill that has been filed on expanding the vouchers to K to 6. Right now, the support is at 7 to 10 and 11-12. If we will focus on the foundational skills as recommended by the EDCOM 2 Year 2 report, we need to support K to 6 more. And I was talking to school heads in, say, Cavite, all division superintendents in areas such as Caloocan. They really have no space to build more classrooms. But there are empty private schools. So the logic is very simple. If you have more students than classrooms in public, you have a handful of students, but extra classrooms in private, GASPE should be a transfer mechanism. The next slides are on the other principles on reasonable supervision and regulation, participatory governance, partnership and collaboration. I think I've said some of the examples and some of the things that we will have to review when we did the workshop last February 17 and 18. But there's really a lot of work that will have to be done. We're just so happy that education now is getting the attention that it should. In fact, in an SWS survey on senatoriables and preferences for senators, it came out in the SWS and strat-based survey that about 90% of our population will want to vote for a senator who will advocate for equal access to education. But again, we don't want this to be just something very populist. No? Very populist kasi, yung, taasan natin sweldo ng teachers natin, bigyan natin ng mga, di ba, laptops, okay? That is not what we mean by making sure that EDCOM already did the work. It's did a lot of research, data gathering, it's data-driven, it's evidence-based. We just have to work on those recommendations, okay, of EDCOM 2. So having said that, I'd like to thank all of you for listening. The next slide is actually an invitation to the administrators who are here. We're holding the Philippine Education Conference on December 2 to 4. Why am I saying this? In the PhilEd conference, every 2 years, we actually have a Senator Edgardo J. Angara lecture. Very similar to the lecture that we're having this afternoon. And we do this because the late Senator Edgardo J. Angara is the father of GASPE. He was the one who legislated the government assistance to students and teachers in private ed. Therefore, when PAC and FAPE turned 50, we actually gave an award to the late Senator Edgardo J. Angara, and it was received by the son who is now our Deputy Secretary. In the Senator Edgardo J. Angara lecture on December 3, we already have the commitment of Dr. Harry Patrinos of World Bank. He will talk about public-private partnership all over again and look at the experience of the Philippines and how to strengthen all of these subsidy programs, which are proofs of concept of complementarity between private and public schools. I hope I contributed to the discussion on transformative education for sustainable development. I did not focus on transformative education because much has been said about that. But while I was with CAP, we were doing a lot of work on transformative education, justice and peace education, environment, poverty reduction with Education Assistance Committee. I think it was not mentioned in the CV that I'm a graduate of St. Scholastica's San Fernando. 18 years I taught at St. Scholastica's Manila. Therefore, I'm a Benedictine. I'm very happy entering San Beda University again. I was here, I think, a year ago when we did our Advent recollection here at San Beda. My son is an alumnus of San Beda High School, 2006. And following the lead of Dr. Yi, I'd like to end by saying that there's a lot of work, but we should keep on working as if everything depended on us. But we pray as if everything depended on God. That's our ora et labora. Thank you for listening, that in all things, God may be glorified.
Thank you, Dr. Rhodora Angela Fernandez Ferrer, Executive Director, Private Education Assistance Committee, for a very interesting talk. Dr. Ferrer emphasized sustainability concerns, the complementarity of public and private schools, and also partnerships and collaboration, especially, are impactful in our dream for sustainable development. At this point, we now come to the open forum. We received a lot of information, overwhelming data. We felt a lot of feelings as well, the highs and the low, as we listen to the speeches of our speakers. For sure, our audience, our students, have a lot of questions as well, curious questions. So we have our microphones on both sides. Kindly identify yourself and then identify who you wish to answer your question from our discussants, and then go ahead and deliver your question. Right? Do we have some questions? All right.
Good afternoon. This question is addressed to Mr. Yi. I'm Jamber Idulsa, second year legal management. We met at YouthLed's National Leaders Summit in Cebu City 2 years ago. I've read the reports on EDCOM 2, and it offers a comprehensive analysis of the educational crisis, particularly on how it roots on our foundational systems. Given EDCOM's 2 key findings, what policy directions or legislative measures are being pursued to address learning gaps and improve access to quality education, especially for the marginalized sectors like the indigenous people in geographically isolated areas such as my home, Bukidnon?
Thank you, thank you. Nice to see you again. Ang tagal na nun, we were actually just starting EDCOM. So in terms of that, this week has been very fruitful for us. Last week, we were invited by the President to present in Malacanang about our findings. So actually, after the presentation, sabi niya, kasi we requested, sabi namin, Mr. President, can we allocate 700 million in the next 3 years so that all GIDA areas and 4th and 5th class municipalities without access to early childhood can have by the end of your term? Sabi niya, let's not wait for 3 years. Let's do that now. And then sabi ni Secretary Pangandaman of DBM, yes, Mr. President, we can fund 700 million this year. And so we are rolling out this year. Within the next month, we will start launching it already. All municipalities without early childhood access, including GIDA areas, will have within 2025. That's one. The second is legislation. We have ratified the bill amending the Early Years Act of 2013. And what it does is it includes Department of Interior and Local Government as co-chair of the ECCD Council. Kasi without the ILG, which is really the one handling the mayors, the local school boards, and ensures that special education fund is allocated for ECCD, walang mangyayari. We can continue dreaming. So that has passed both houses of Congress. Within the month or next month, we feel that it will be finally signed by the President and it will institutionalize and fix many of the problems we are facing in early childhood education. Kasi for us, if we don't fix the nutrition and early childhood problems, wala tayong magagawa for later years. We've also asked the President to certify as urgent a bill amending masustansyang pagkain sa bawat batang Pilipino. It is a law on supplementary feeding for 3 to 5 and school-based feeding from kinder to grade 6. Bakit ganun? Kasi nagpasa tayo ng dalawang batas, first 1,000 days law, 0 to 2, tapos nagpasa tayo ng masustansyang pagkain, 3 years old to grade 6. Naiwan yung 2 to 3. Wala palang feeding nutrition programs for 2 to 3. We are filing a bill by the end of the month to correct that legislative error, and the President has certified and agreed to make it an urgent measure for Congress to pass within the year. So hopefully, those will make a huge dent. Thank you.
Thank you po, sir.
Thank you very much. We have another question right here.
Good afternoon po. I am Vincent Mira from Polsci Department po. This question is inspired from Sir Ken Robinson's TED Talk entitled Do Schools Kill Creativity? And also from my own experiences. When I was browsing the internet for scholarships, there are rarely any scholarships attuned for humanities courses like Polsci, philosophy, social studies, etc. Maybe there are, but most are privately sponsored and almost rarely from the government. Mostly, if not all, are heavily prioritizing STEM courses. So it got me thinking, is this just about jobs and economic returns, or is there a deeper issue in how we value different fields of study? At the same time, I recognize that this shouldn't be a competition between STEM and humanities. I know that both of them plays a distinct role in shaping our society. But when we discuss educational reforms and national development strategies, we often hear more about the need to strengthen STEM fields. What we rarely hear is an equivalent push for the humanities despite their critical role in governance, law, ethics, and of course, social cohesion. So my main question then is, while this does not have to be a dichotomy, given existing proposals for educational reform, do you see an urgent need to recalibrate our approach in how we fund and support humanities and social sciences compared to STEM? Is this primarily a matter of economic pragmatism where governments prioritize skills that directly fuel industries and technological growth? Or is there an overlooked case for elevating the status of humanities education in policymaking and development planning, particularly in the Philippine context? And any of from the panel can answer the question.
Hi, I can start, actually. It's funny because I was reading that book last night. TESDA Secretary Benitez sent me a copy of the book by PDF. I've read it in the past, but it was a good book, so I wanted to refresh my memory, so I was reading it again. Totoo yan. our focus has mostly been STEM, and actually we studied that in the 1960s there was a Science Education Act which became the starting point of the Philippine Science High School system, special curricular programs in the sciences, elementary, secondary, DepEd Science High Schools. Pero to be honest also, the science high schools, it's not like they are focusing only on sciences. What's happened was that has been the way by which we supported gifted learners. Pero whether or not we review that policy and to make sure that we are deliberate in training the best and the brightest, not just in STEM but across all fields equitably or equally, is something that we should do. We've started doing that in EdCom actually in the past months. And to be honest, si Sexani might be the best champion because he is always saying not let's make all of our graduates employable. He's saying that, but also we need to make sure that they are curious and eager learners. In fact, in the review of the senior high school now, through the support of Ateneo, we are trying to figure out how to make sure that all courses have creativity embedded in them. In our visit in JASAMS, which is a school in Quezon City, which is a progressive school, we found that it's hindi naman siya either or pipili ka this or that. Actually, both. We found so many lessons that was suffused or used arts in terms of really making use of your knowledge kasi applied naman yun. So that's something that we need to continue doing. From the side of policymakers, I feel that we also need to pay attention to it. When I was still in CHED, and I was there for several years, laging may grants for researches. Pero lahat ng researches, dapat published researches, Scopus Index journals, etc., etc. Pero paano yung mga poets? Paano yung mga sculptors? Paano yung mga filmmakers? What is the equivalent of a peer-reviewed journal in the arts if you wanted to really provide those types of work? So ang ginawa namin, we formed a committee to really think about it because it's not just in the Philippines, around the world, there is less sophistication in figuring out how higher education policies, structures, and programs can really support the arts better. So I think, one, yes, there are efforts. Second, you are right. We need to be a bit more deliberate and we need to be strategic as to how to develop that. Third, we are not in this alone. So many other countries, in fact, the rest of the world is similarly struggling with it and still needs to pay more attention to it. So you're right. We need to. But we need people to gain fluency in both worlds, in the arts and also in policy, to make sure that we are able to give it justice. Because otherwise, it is policymakers trying to understand arts and ang hirap-hirap to bridge that gap. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee.
Dr. Vilches.
Thank you for that question. I resonate with it. I'm in the arts and humanities field. It's true that, I think we need to address that within the institution because we cannot be waiting for policy outside to address that issue. We have to address that. So for example, if outside the preference is STEM, it should not be inside in terms of the point of view, you know? I mean, I think even the CHED GE has got arts already embedded in it. So I think it is within the institution that has to begin, that there is that maybe there's a cross-pollination between and among technology, management, sociology, psychology, the arts, literature, philosophy, etc. By having programs within the school that can do interdisciplinarity. So maybe create a system whereby students are able to do a minor in another program. Like for example, in Ateneo, there was a time when I was chair of the English department and we do we honor the minors. There was one from management engineering who was minoring in creative writing. So I said to him, why are you doing creative writing here? He says, you know, if math is getting tougher, I want to have a life. I want to be here in creative writing. But I think that's an indication that there is no polarity. That's an indication that you're accepted if you switch from one discipline to another. And even in the way the orgs are managed, you know, that even teachers, it's a mindset, you see. And that mindset has to be taken on board through curricula and through extracurricular activities. Thank you.
Dr.
Yeah.
Ferrer?
May I
Yes,
just
ma'am.
add, the question is, do schools kill creativity? I don't think it's a question of whether it's STEM or humanities, because for both, there is creative thinking. The schools are really not developing creative thinking. If you will look at the latest NAT result for senior high, we are very poor at creative thinking, critical thinking, problem solving. Because that is something that is very difficult to develop if the foundational are not there. Like, how do you talk critical thinking when you have reading comprehension issues, right? So I think, do schools kill creativity? Well, they don't develop it. If we will look at results of our own national assessments. And of course, international assessments would also say that we have a problem there. Now, insofar as scholarships, because I'm a scholar of a DOST, why the push for science and engineering, technology, and all of this science-related, pure and applied? Because there are very few takers. If you will look at the landscape, even while there are a lot of scholarships, we have very few takers for these scholarships. So that is something, to my mind, we are not a STEM society. The Philippines is not. Are we good and strong in the humanities? I am not sure as well. So there really is a lot that will have to be done to improve the education system so that we will be able to develop what we call as 21st century, cutting across content areas, critical thinking, creative thinking, collaboration, communications.
Thank you very much. Dr. Lucas?
So speaking of scholarship, and speaking of minds, so it's the reverse at De La Salle because we offer scholarships almost to all fields, no? But the problem is, ayaw naman nilang mag-education kasi nasa College of Education ako. Lahat sila gusto STEM. We're waiting, we have a parang scholarship day for prospective students to come. Tapos meron kaming parang after a long, long time, may dumating na isa, finally. Science education siya. Tapos nung tinanong namin siya, so talagang mag-teacher ka? Parang, teacher po ba yung science education? Oh, kasi science education, di ba? Ay, baka hindi po ito magustuhan ng parents ko. So nawala, yung kay isa-isa nawala pa. So, it's the reverse. I think it's the mindset. Kasi gusto daw ng parents niya maging engineer siya. STEM pa din, yung preference, more than the humanities. Scholarships are there. It's just a matter of siguro choosing the school. So those who would like to go into education and liberal arts, meron kaming scholarships sa De La Salle. Thank you.
Thank you po.
Ma'am, probably for the master's and the graduate school. Okay. Thank you for your answers, discussants. We have another question. Yes, go ahead.
Hello po. My name is Olaso Catriotris B from 11 Humes 2. This was specifically for Mr. Yi, pero anyone can answer this question. This is specifically about bullying being mentioned in the Philippines. Hello? Okay. Bullying has been a major issue in childhood, especially in my childhood, not just from students, but also from educators. I find that going to school with someone you are supposed to entrust your safety with and your well-being with, as well as your education, these kinds of things have made the environment feel unsafe. It made me lose interest and motivation in attending school and doing tasks. And I find that this kind of environment as well not only created a fearful environment for children when I was younger, children such as me, even children like me today. It left also a lot of children with harmful kind of behaviors to imitate from educators from the symbolic interactionist perspective, such as bullying, which manifests as a form of negativity from these kinds of specific behaviors from their environment, like their educators. My question is, what are the current actions toward these kinds of issues in the Philippines and the education system, and what can be done about these kinds of issues currently?
Thank you. Thank you for raising that. To be honest, I was giving a talk earlier this week, and it was the first time that issue was brought up. I think one thing is clear, that that is unacceptable. And if we are saying that what we are aiming for is a conducive learning environment in school and at home that does not preclude teachers or faculty members. Given that and given your input, I think we will start looking into this and figuring out how we could address this concern. Because I think everyone agrees that that is unacceptable. The measures by which that will be monitored, the mechanisms by which that will be addressed is something we will look at in terms of current policies and what we could strengthen. It would be good also to get a bit more details, because what I heard in my talk this week with another group was quite shocking, to be honest. And so it would be good to get a sense of the range, and we will initiate data gathering also and consultations so that we have a full sense of the issues at hand. Thank you.
Thank you very much for answering my question po.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Sorry.
Excuse me for a while.
Can I just,
Yes, Dr. Vilches.
Can I just respond to that question? So although, and I thank you, Mark, for saying that this is going to be studied, but I think within the institution, something has to be done. So in other words, a mechanism within the institution that students who feel this way should have to report to a discipline committee or to HR in an institution, and that has got to be addressed because it is a no-no. It shouldn't be. We cannot be waiting for any policy outside. The institution itself should be able to come up with something that will address that situation. Thank you.
Actually, I'm part of the bullying research, di ba, Dr. Mark? So I'm part of the 2 bullying studies of EDCOM 2. And just to share, we found from the PISA that students were saying that even their teachers were bullying them. And not only their classmates, even the teachers are the bullies. So yeah, it's really high time that we look into this phenomenon because it's really affecting a lot of our students and it's not giving a very positive feeling for young learners, and it has completely damaged your sense of self, so to speak. So
All right. Thank you very much, and thank you for that sharing. Next.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Matthew D. OBS from Bachelor of Science of Information Technology. So the best expression is, if you have just a free education, you will receive about the most essentials to prevail communications about the education. So here's about the short question for you, for Dr. Yi. What is the opportunities expansion or expansion against all odds for free education, and why? Again, what is the opportunities expansion or expansions against all odds for free education, and why?
Opportunities for free education.
Yes, po.
What are the opportunities for free education? Is that your question?
Yes, po.
I guess that was my title actually of that slide there, opportunistic expansion or expansion against all odds. I think what we did was expansion against all odds. That despite limited resources, we kept expanding different levels, as I said earlier, from grade 4 to grade 7, to high school, to college, to kinder, to higher levels again. So what we did was expansion against all odds.
You received us for free educations to buy these payments to recognizations about the students.
What did you say? I'm sorry. Can you say that slowly?
The students will be buying these payments for the free education.
Will be
buy these payments for free education.
Will be buying the payments for free education. Did I hear it right?
Yes.
If it's free education, I guess there is no need to pay for anything.
Well, I think in the context of Free Higher Education Act, no, RA 10931, which was passed into law in 2018, what it did was, I'm not sure if you were a beneficiary, what happened was all state universities, free ang tuition and fees. In all local universities and colleges, like the mga pamantasan ng Marikina, pamantasan ng lungsod ng Valenzuela, as long as it's CHED recognized and that the program they have has a COPC, which is a certification given by CHED, then all students taking that program, free tuition and fees. But it also the component on tertiary education subsidy for the poorest of the poor. What is it? That if you are poorest of the poor, listahan ng 2.0 or Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino family, full tuition, subsidy, allowances, and when it started, 60,000 pesos yung allowance. What happened was, through the years, for some reason, bumaba yung allowance, ngayon 10,000 na lang. Now, the challenge of that is, kung that course, kaya mong pumili ng school, depende on what your interest is or your preference, right now, more or less, even if you use the entire amount just for tuition, you could only go to courses. And livelihood education, criminology, elementary education, and 2 other courses. So it really affects choice and yeah. So what happened was, even if there is a tertiary education subsidy, if you are poor and you cannot attend the course that you want anyway, there is no genuine choice. If you could not go to the university that is close to you anyway or that you desired, then there is no genuine choice, which is why we are pushing for amendments to the law and for the restoration of the full amount that was meant for it, which should be at 60,000 and should be adjusted based on inflation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that question. And one last question. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, good afternoon po. Before I give my question, I'd like to greet my former professor, Dr. Ferrer. Jonathan Hubilla po. Yes, hello po. From St. Jude Catholic School po. My question is directed to Dr. But anyone from the panel can answer the question. Is there a recommendation on the infusion of artificial intelligence po in the curriculum of the basic education? Since though the report focuses on what is needed now and to address the foundational recommendations or needs of the education system, but we also, of course, since our country is a social media capital, we could focus also on what is next, which is AI po. And secondly po, will there be a consideration in reverting to infusing Philippine history in the curriculum since it was removed from the secondary curriculum and it was replaced with contemporary issues? And I believe this would address the problems in how our system, our education system is treated right now with the other concerns, especially with the complementarity in education po. And lastly po, in the issue of bullying, since it was mentioned po, if you are within the jurisdiction po, is there an update on the expanded Anti-Bullying Act? Because so far, the ABA is only within the basic education and not with the tertiary yet po.
Thank you. So that's 3 questions. So AI, I have to, at least, okay pa naman ang memory ko. So AI, we are still conducting our consultations, but DepEd has already started embracing the use of AI in terms of remediation programs. So it's using technologies now to figure out how it could be used to improve literacy and numeracy learning recovery efforts of the department. From the side of EDCOM, we are still conducting our consultations as to how this might be helpful and useful across basic ed to higher ed. We've seen progress, possibilities when it comes to TVET as well. And we know that in higher ed, it's a burning issue because it's more and more being used by faculty and institutions are rolling out policies for it. But from our side, wala pa kaming real recommendations on it, but we are studying it and doing consultations. Second is the history. I was consulting with our educators here. What I know is that history is one of the core courses that will be required in the revised senior high school curriculum that will be rolled out by June. So it will be there. Third is yung bullying. Unfortunately, we've sent our comments to revise the implementing rules and regulations of the Anti-Bullying Act of 2013. But that has been accepted by DepEd. They are finalizing the draft. It will address most of the deficiencies or the challenges faced in the past 10 years on the anti-bullying law. But for us to expand it to different levels, it will require an amendment of that law itself. We have not yet done that. We will need to check whether there is a need for it. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions. And once again, let's give a big hand for our discussants, Dr. Karol R.E., Professor Dr. Maria Lucy Vilches, Dr. Rochelle Irene G. Lucas, Dr. Rhodora Angela Fernandez Ferrer. We will try our best to collect some other questions that you have written on the piece of paper, and we will do our best to seek answers from our discussants and share them to our website. I know that you're very interested for this afternoon's lecture and get some answers from our discussants. Okay. So at this point, we come to the awarding of the plaque of recognition to our discussants. We'd like to request Reverend Father Aloysius Maria Maranan, OSB, our Rector President, and Dr. Divina Edralin, Vice President for Academics, to award our plaque of recognition to our speakers. The text reads, San Bede University Office of the Rector President presents this plaque of recognition to Dr. Karol Mark R.E., Executive Director, EdCom 2, for sharing his valuable and renowned expertise as a resource speaker on the theme, Transformative Education Towards Sustainable Development, during the 7th Senator Edgardo J. Angara Memorial Public Lecture Series on Public Policy, given this 14th day of March 2025 at San Bede University, Manila, Philippines. Signed, Very Reverend Father Aloysius Maria Maranan, OSB, University Rector President. This same plaque of recognition is awarded to Professor Dr. Maria Luz C. Vilches. This same plaque of recognition is awarded to Professor Dr. Rochelle Irene G. Lucas. The same plaque of recognition is awarded to Dr. Rhodora Angela Fernandez Ferrer. Once again, let us give our loudest applause to all our speakers for generously sharing their time and knowledge to all of us. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Father Rector. And also, thank you very much, Dr. Davina Edralin. Now we've come to the end of the program. We shall now have the closing remarks to be given by Mrs. Gloria Manalang Angara, which will be read to us by the Vice President for Research and Innovation. Let's welcome Dr. Fernandino Jose Fontanilla.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Mrs. Gloria Angara, the wife of the late Senator Edgardo J. Angara, wanted to be with us today to listen to our wonderful speakers talk about transformative education in sustainable development. Unfortunately, she's unable to attend, and so please allow me to read on her behalf her closing remarks. Parting is such sweet sorrow, and so we have come to the end of yet another engaging lecture series on the issue of sustainable development and goal number 4 of quality education. As we take leave of each other and of our renowned speakers, we cherish the hope that the Philippines would emerge once again as a nation proud of its educational system and with its youth ready to take on the world as its enlightened citizenry. May the vision of our honored speakers become a candle that could be lighted to lead us on the right path to enlightenment and achievement, lest we fail and simply curse the darkness of national oblivion. We'd like to express our profound appreciation to our speakers, Dr. Marquis, Dr. Maria Luz Vilches, Dr. Rochelle Lucas, and Dr. Rhodora Fernandez Ferrer, for shedding light on the attainment of quality education, and thus inspiring us to aspire to national greatness. To Father Aloysius Maria Maranan, and to everyone who had organized and participated in today's discourse sponsored by San Beda University, thank you, and I hope you do your share in uplifting education in our country, the Philippines. God bless and a pleasant afternoon to all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dino Fontanilla, and thank you very much, Mrs. Gloria Manalang Angara, for your constant support to us and to our program. Thank you, everyone, for attending the 7th Public Lecture of San Beda University. We hope that this afternoon's lecture did not only enlighten, but also inspired and empowered you to continue to strive for a future where education is a catalyst for positive change. Before we stand to sing the San Beda University hymn, we wish to request you to scan the QR code for the evaluation. Your feedback is valuable to us. So we will give you time to scan and access the evaluation form. Thank you so much. Now we request everyone to stand for the singing of the San Beda University hymn. will be requesting our audience to stay for a while for one big group photo. So kindly compress at the middle. And we will request Father Rector and our 4 discussants to join our audience down there. Our photographers, may we request you to be here on stage. Please gather at the center. All right. People at the side, please join us. Closer pa daw. Kindly compress. Ayan, okay na. Nagmo-move na ang lahat. Okay. All right. Sa center, come on, join us, students. So that you are part of history, this is the 7th public lecture of San Bede. Ready? At the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, thank you very much. This concludes the Venerable Bede Distinguished Public Lecture Series, the 7th Senator Edgardo J. Angara Memorial Public Lecture on Public Policy. Thank you, everyone. God bless.